Nina Avery had never been the type to believe in aliens. Sure, she'd seen her fair share of UFOs on late-night TV specials, but that was as close as she'd ever gotten to extraterrestrial life. She lived a relatively normal life in a cozy apartment in the city, working as a barista by day and binge-watching sci-fi movies by night. The only excitement in her life came from swiping left and right on dating apps, trying to find someone who could keep up with her sarcastic humor and love for obscure 80s music. That was, until the night of the incident. It started as a typical Friday evening, rain pattering against her window, her cat curled up on the couch, and a glass of cheap wine in hand. Nina was scrolling through her phone, scrolling past endless profiles of guys who claimed to be adventurous but probably had never left their hometown. Then her phone buzzed. A new match. Interesting. His name was Zarnak, a name that sounded oddly otherworldly. Intrigued, Nina tapped on his profile. His picture was a little blurry, but what stood out was his wide grin, two gleaming teeth slightly longer than average. His bio read, "Looking for a mate to probe my mind. Love long walks on the galaxy and deep conversations about the future of interstellar travel." Nina rolled her eyes. Another one of those weirdos with a quirky sense of humor. She was about to swipe left when his next message popped up. "I promise I'm not one of those guys who makes you uncomfortable. I'm just looking for love. But also, do you like weirdly shaped vegetables?" Her curiosity piqued. Nina replied, "Weirdly shaped vegetables? You mean like cucumbers? Because I'm a big fan." "Precisely. You'd be amazed how cucumbers from my home planet can change shape depending on the mood of the person holding them." "Fascinating stuff," Zarnak responded. Nina laughed to herself. "Okay, this guy was definitely strange, but in a fun way." She typed back, "Well, I can't resist an alien with a sense of humor. Let's see where this goes." The following Saturday, Zarnak suggested they meet up for drinks. He proposed a small, secluded bar just outside the city. Nothing too fancy, just a quiet spot to chat and get to know each other. Nina was a little wary, of course. After all, this was the kind of date you tell your friends to keep an eye on you in case you ended up on some strange reality show. But something about his messages felt different. He wasn't pushing for anything, just casual conversation. When she arrived at the bar, the place was empty except for a few regulars nursing their drinks. Nina walked up to the counter and ordered a gin and tonic, hoping the alcohol would calm her nerves. She hadn't been on a date in months, and this was shaping up to be wild. Then the door opened. Nina's heart skipped a beat. Standing in the doorway was Zarnak, or rather, a being that was definitely not human. He was about 7 feet tall with long, gangly limbs and a slightly translucent bluish skin tone. His head was disproportionately large, with 2 bright green eyes that seemed to glow faintly. His mouth was wide, and those teeth, definitely alien. And that smile, it was both unsettling and charming in its own way. "Zarnak?" Nina asked, half laughing in disbelief. He nodded, his head tilting curiously, as if he were trying to read her reaction. "Well, you're—" "Not what I was expecting," Nina said, trying to hide her shock behind a sip of her drink. "But you look interesting." Zarnak beamed. "I know. I try to make a lasting first impression. Shall we sit?" They sat at a small table in the corner. Zarnak ordered a drink that Nina couldn't even pronounce. For a few minutes, they exchanged small talk about their respective lives. Zarnak told her about his home planet Xyler, which was located in a galaxy far, far away. He described it as a paradise, lush landscapes, purple skies, and cucumbers that changed shape based on the holder's mood. Nina was intrigued, but tried not to get too wrapped up in the sci-fi fantasy of it all. "Do you ever get lonely?" Nina asked, feeling a sense of sympathy for him. Zarnak paused, his large eyes scanning the room thoughtfully. "Loneliness is a concept we don't fully understand where I come from. We are all interconnected, our minds, our emotions. It's a shared experience, unlike yours. Sounds Beautiful, Nina replied. And terrifying. You're saying you can read each other's thoughts. Yes, but only when we allow it, Zarnak clarified. We choose who to connect with, but we can feel everything from love to sadness, fear to joy. We don't have to talk, Nina. We just know. Nina shivered slightly. The idea of not having any personal boundaries was a bit much to process. But she found herself drawn to Zarnak. He was odd, yes, but there was something undeniably fascinating about him. The night was going wonderfully, despite its surreal quality. They shared stories, laughed at each other's jokes, and even danced when Zarnak started humming an unfamiliar tune. But as the evening progressed, Nina started to notice something strange. Zarnak's attention seemed to shift, more erratic, more intense. His large eyes locked onto her, as if he were trying to read her thoughts. And then, without warning, he reached out to touch her hand. Zarnak, I think you're crossing into too much personal space, Nina said, pulling back slightly, a little uncomfortable. Zarnak blinked, tilting his head. Oh, I apologize. My people are very open with affection. But Nina, I have something important to share. Something that's a part of who I am. Nina furrowed her brow. Okay, what's this about? Zarnak leaned in closer, his voice lowering. I want to probe you. Nina blinked. What? She sputtered, nearly choking on her drink. I mean, what kind of date is this? Relax, Zarnak said, holding up his hands in mock defense. Not in the way you think. It's a mental probe. I can access your memories, your emotions, everything. I promise. It's completely consensual. It's how we connect on Xylar. Whoa, whoa. Nina stammered, backing away. I'm not ready for that level of intimacy. I didn't even know we were at probe level yet. Zarnak looked sheepish. Oh, I misinterpreted the situation. My apologies again, Nina. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. Nina couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of the situation. Well, that's one way to ruin a date, Zarnak. I was starting to think we had something going on, but now you want to read my memories like a library book. I understand, Zarnak said, his eyes softening. I just got carried away, perhaps a bit too eager. Let's just enjoy the evening, shall we? Despite the awkwardness, Nina couldn't stay mad. After all, this was the most bizarre date she'd ever been on. A mental probing? She wasn't sure what she expected, but it certainly wasn't that. As the night wore on, Nina and Zarnak managed to salvage their evening. They shared more stories, and even though Zarnak kept making strange references to probing, Nina found herself warming up to him. He wasn't your typical guy, but he had a certain charm, an eccentricity that was hard to resist. When the evening ended, Zarnak offered her a ride back to her apartment in his spaceship. She hesitated but ultimately agreed, unable to resist the odd adventure he was offering. The next few days were filled with more odd dates and explorations of each other's worlds, both figuratively and literally.